Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident fanalist, as always, Ryan Schlip. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_data. Well, let's run through some of the news and notes that has popped up. Kind of busy talking about a couple different things yesterday, and since news is real slow and the Packers haven't really done anything since their two moves, at least not that I'm aware of, give me a little chance to get caught up. We've obviously been following the Aaron Rodgers saga. The question is, where is he going to go and all that kind of stuff. And obviously, as I said, the options are narrowing for him. I've made quite a few assumptions. One of which, for example, was when it comes to the Steelers, a lot of things make sense. You could say this about a lot of teams, but the Steelers in particular, it makes almost perfect sense, aside from the part where, does that kind of organization want to put up with Aaron Rodgers? Now, put up with Aaron Rodgers assumes things, right? It assumes that there's going to be these problems that come with Aaron Rodgers. And it was always a little unfair. Maybe he'd come in and have a good attitude. Maybe he'd be willing to succumb to another person's offense or whatever. It's not super likely, but, in the way they do things and all the rules and everything that comes with that. But I think I was correct in assuming that it comes with some baggage, because over the last couple days, it's become one constant narrative. Things have been kind of bouncing around back and forth. Now it's kind of down to one with a slight caveat narrative. The consistent narrative is that it's down to the Steelers and the Giants. And the interesting note here, this is kind of what I was talking about in terms of baggage, is apparently they are ready to essentially, I don't want to go so far as to say there's a deal on the table as much as they're ready to have conversations and potentially move in that direction. And obviously they'd like to do it as quickly as possible to determine how they want to move forward building their teams. And essentially they're being left on red by Aaron Rodgers. He has that whole issue with not getting a signal out by him. But yeah, he's just not responding. The tiny little caveat is that the Vikings are kind of in the mix here. The Athletic's Diana Rossini reports the Vikings are still evaluating their options at quarterback, including the possibility of signing Aaron Rodgers. Rossini went on to say that Rodgers is intrigued by the idea of playing in Minnesota. A report from earlier today noted that both the Steelers and Giants are still waiting to hear from Rodgers. While the Vikings have the best supporting cast of the three teams, it's hard to imagine him choosing a camp battle with J.J. McCarthy over the wide-open depth charts of Pittsburgh and New York. Rodgers and Russell Wilson are the last major dominoes to fall at the quarterback position before the draft. It's possible one or both wait until after the draft to choose their spots. ESPN's Adam Schefter reports that the Giants and Steelers are waiting to hear from Rodgers. Schefter makes it clear that Rodgers is the clear-cut number one choice for both franchises, but has not communicated to either team what his timeline is, what his preference is. Nobody knows. Russell Wilson is thought to be the top backup option for both teams, though Schefter expects Wilson to have more opportunities available to him once the Rodgers domino falls. Here is Adam Schefter commenting on this situation.
To me, this shouldn't be that hard, right? Like, the Steelers want you. The Giants want you. We're seeing players across the league make decisions. It shouldn't be that hard. Either you want to play or you don't. You want to play Pittsburgh or you don't. You want to play in New York or you don't. Like, Chewy, what are you going to have for lunch? You're going to make a decision, you're going to drag it out for 4 days, 5 days, a week. Like, it's not that hard. Make the decision and live with it.
So, we saw a lot of this with Brett Favre. This is sort of that diva behavior, right? This is I'm the superstar. Everybody does things on my timeline. It's my career. It's my life. I'll do what I want when I want. And you can say that that's fair and that's fine and he's earned that, et cetera, whatever. That's fine. I don't agree with that sentiment, but you can say that. But that doesn't really change the fact that that is his mentality, that is his mindset, and he's going to carry that into the team and into the locker room. That's who he is, that's who he's become, or that's who he's always been. I don't really know. Remember, coming out of college, he was seen as arrogant. So, yeah, I stand on my original thought that if I were the Steelers, if I were the Vikings, if I were the Giants, I don't really want Aaron Rodgers. For the Giants, I don't see why either side would want it. The Giants are not going to win anything with Aaron Rodgers. You have a terrible team. You need to start from the bottom up. It's the dumbest of all possible decisions that you could possibly make. Rodgers would have no reason or benefit to go to the Giants. They can't win anything there. It's like the Jets, but worse. The Steelers are a basket case waiting to happen. Now, they have a stable head coach, but you've got a psycho wide receiver and a second psycho wide receiver on the other side, both of which are prone to throw temper tantrums, and a quarterback that's prone to throw temper tantrums, and a team that is just not really going to do anything. It's kind of like the Packers, where they're sort of contenders, but you know they're not going to do anything even if they get to the playoffs. You know what I mean? But worse. It's if you're Rodgers, I would think you'd want to find sort of a team on the come up. The Steelers are like the NFL team version of you. They used to be kind of cool. They used to compete. They used to be a hot team. They used to this, that, and the other. And now they're just scrapping away at trying to be competent and not be laughed at. That's not what you want to join. And if you're the Steelers, why? I mean, it's just you get to this point where it just feels gross. It feels desperate, you know? The Steelers should have more pride than this. You should do what the Packers did. You should man up, get you a new quarterback, and rebuild. You have to restart. They don't want to. They want to keep Tomlin. They want to keep the staff intact. They want to keep as many players as they can, and then we're just going to patchwork all this stuff. Okay, well, you can do the patchwork game for the next 10, 15 years like every other team that plays the patchwork game, and it just never really pans out. I mean, who has it worked for? The Rams didn't get better until they overhauled everybody, McVay and that whole crew. The Lions didn't do that. You could say, Goff and Stafford, whatever. Bullcrap. The Lions turned everything around when they canned everybody and restarted. Washington got better when they got a new quarterback. The Chiefs got better when they got a new quarterback and front office. I don't know too many teams that are just hanging on for dear life that just figure it out because they have the right combination of old free agents put together. I mean, it's like what the Vikings do. I mean, they got the new GM and new coach, right? That's cool. But we just keep doing this thing where we keep hanging on to old free agents. Stop doing that. They finally got rid of Kirk Cousins. Cool. But then they go out and get another quarterback. Obviously, injury happened, but you get this other quarterback and then a bunch of other old free agents. It's like, so why would you want to do that? And then, Minnesota kind of makes sense. Again, I hate to say that it makes sense. It kind of makes the most sense for both teams. Because, like I said, Minnesota's kind of like that, but, they got a couple good wide receivers, and they got kind of a young, energetic coach, good play caller and all that, reunite with Aaron Jones. And for the Vikings, I would say it's a really stupid idea for the Vikings to do it, which it may still be because of the whole potential problems with the locker room thing. But at the same time, you're already halfway playing the let's see if we can win with old free agents game. So you might as well do it. The only problem, and it's a big problem, is that the second you commit to that, J.J. McCarthy is not taking the field. And he's not taking the field until Rodgers leaves. And you're not going to want to commit to Rodgers more than a year, and he's going to know that. And unless you're willing to do that, he's not going to want to play ball. Because he doesn't want to play this game where he comes there and he plays well, and they're like, yeah, but we have J.J. McCarthy, so you have to leave now. That's where the real complication... I mean, if you guys could... If Rodgers just wants one good year, it would be a perfect marriage. If he's like, look, I don't even care. After I'm gonna come in, we're gonna win a Super Bowl, and I'm gonna ride off into the sunset. I don't want to come back after this 1 year. I need 1 year to stick it to the Packers and then teach JJ everything I know so that he can continue doing that for all of eternity and beat the Bears because I hate them too, and then I'll ride off into the sunset. If he was committed to that, it would make sense, but he's not. And even if he kind of knew he wanted to do that, just the fact that the Vikings would be angling for, like, let's give you 1 year and then you're definitely leaving would piss him off, and he wouldn't want to do it. He just wants you to know, he wants you to want him. He's like that person. Like, I'm not into you, but I want you to be into me. Like, I'm not going to date you, but I'm going to get kind of jealous or I'm not going to commit to you, but I'm going to get kind of jealous if you start talking about other people, So we'll see. I understand Rodgers has his whole process, and last time he had to process, he said he wanted to come out and decided to retire until, he found out people were talking smack, and then he wanted to play again. I I still think he needs to retire. I mean, not even just based on him, but based on his options. I mean, good Lord, it's just a nightmare waiting to happen pretty much no matter what you do. But also, if you're the other teams, stop waiting on him. You know what I mean? Don't. Maybe get Russell Wilson, because the benefit of Russell Wilson is that he's just so much worse than Rodgers that it's basically still tanking, but you can lie and pretend that you tried. Because he's terrible. I don't know what happened to that guy, but he's the worst. But you pay him almost no money. He tanks your team, and then you get a good pick and you get a real quarterback. But you don't want Rodgers. He's going to come in. He's going to cause problems that are going to take a long time to undo. You're probably going to have to fire people, and there's a whole lot of damage control that's going to have to go on afterwards. Not to mention, he's going to win you a couple games that you wouldn't have otherwise. You don't want to deal with that. Don't do it. Another sort of used to be Packers news. Josh Myers does have a new team. He is now with the Jets. The funny thing about the Jets story, 1 year, $3.5 million, by the way, is that the Jets' new quarterback is Justin Fields. And Josh Myers used to be Justin Fields' center at Ohio State. So kind of a cool little reunion there now that I'm I guess kind of a Justin Fields fan, and can just kind of root for the Jets and, Josh Myers to have a nice little time there with his old buddy. And I assume they're old buddies. Maybe they hated each other. I have no idea, but kind of an interesting little storyline there. AJ Dillon, likewise, is on the move. He's actually going to the Eagles, so you want to talk about a fantastic situation for that guy. I don't think he was able to thrive very well in Green Bay because it was a lot of... You got to be real... You have to have a really fast processor to be able to make it work like Aaron Jones, because the offensive line didn't generally do a good job. So you kind of had to wait for things to develop and then trust your offensive line. And too many times he wouldn't trust it and he'd bounce and then it would be there. And then other times he would trust it and it wasn't there. And you got to have almost a sixth sense and a really fast processor to play in Green Bay and probably a lot of other places. There's a chance that he's going to go to Philly and just light it up, because if there's just holes for him to run through, I mean, he might do some damage. So that's not a terrible deal for the Eagles. It's not a terrible deal for Dillon. It's a 1 year deal. I don't even see the amount here. They must not have known it at the time. I don't know how much, but that's probably a pretty good decision there on both parts, on both accounts. Jack Sanborn, former Chicago Bears linebacker, is on the move. He's going to the Cowboys. I figured I'd bring it up just because we all want to talk about the people they bring in, and nobody wants to talk about the people that are leaving. So let's start. Jack Sanborn, pretty good linebacker for them, a really solid run defender, is not going to be there anymore. So there you go. He's going to the Cowboys, as I said. DeMarcus Lawrence is officially off the market. He's going to the Seahawks for a 1 year deal. Oh, I'm sorry, 3 I was like 1 year, 42, 3 year deal up to $42 million. But that's it for most of the smaller news. Why don't we go ahead and take a break? We'll be right back. All right, some news on the Cooper Kupp situation. As I said, I didn't really think it made much sense, and it's starting to move forward without the Green Bay Packers. At least I haven't heard them come up very much. Fox Sports' Jordan Schultz initially reported that Cooper Kupp has interest from at least 5 teams. Perhaps more importantly, as Schultz reported that Kupp doesn't plan on having a long, drawn-out process and is expected to decide on a new team rather quickly. The veteran receiver was officially let go by the Rams, blah, 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 blah. That was followed by Mike Garafolo saying that the Saints, Jaguars, and Seahawks are in the mix for Cooper Kupp. Hilariously, I added the hilariously part, Garafolo adds that Kupp is going to make a lot of money and could get close to $16 million. I mean, okay, if you say so. I saw somebody else had a similar report that was like, he's going to have a really hot market. He could make between 12 and 14 million. It's like, I'm sorry, but like $15 million is not a hot market. It's like 2010 all over again or something. It's also hilarious that the Seahawks apparently, I didn't take note of this, but they're looking for a versatile receiver that can kind of do everything. Didn't you guys just purge 2 receivers, and now you're in the market for a receiver? I mean, is Tyler Lockett still available, you freaking morons? I mean, seriously, you got rid of Tyler Lockett, and you're looking at Cooper Kupp? Isn't that like the same guy? I don't understand. And then, I think I alluded to this last night, but the Athletic's Diana Rossini reports teams around the league think that the Bengals' asking price to trade for Trey Hendrickson is quote-unquote ridiculous. Apparently, teams are willing to pay Hendrickson the contract that he's wanting, but the asking price by the Bengals is simply too much to get a deal done at this time. So Hendrickson wants to leave, and, his agent's talking to teams. They're like, here's how much we want. And teams are like, heck yeah, dude, that makes a lot of sense. And they go to the Bengals, and the Bengals are holding it up because they're like, dude, if you want to take Hendrickson, it's going to cost you $1 billion. $1 billion whatevers. Which kind of makes sense because they don't want the divorce to happen. You know what I mean? It's not like a mutual parting. And I guess that works to their negotiating benefit. Number one, that they don't usually trade, so everybody knows they're not bluffing. And number two, they legitimately don't want to do this. So yeah, it's a high price. You don't like it. I guess that sucks. Do not have any details on what that contract for Trey Hendrickson would look like or what the compensation that the Bengals are asking for would look like. But, again, unlikely he comes to the Packers. However, it is the last real piece and really the only massive free agent piece that's getting moved pretty much this entire year. You could argue DK is in that realm as well. But he's kind of it. Pending some other kind of breakdown in contract with, whatever, some other player down the line. But it's worth keeping track of is the bottom line. Nate Hobbs will be wearing number 21, apparently, which is funny. It continues the streak of Packers getting rid of people and immediately giving their jerseys away to somebody else as Stokes leaves. I don't think that's official, but there was some banner hanging up of Hobbs somewhere, I believe, and it was cut off, but it appeared that he was wearing number 21 as a jersey, so it was inferred. Speaking of Hobbs, though, he did a sit-down interview with Matt Schneidman of The Athletic. There's one kind of big thing in there that we'll get to, but just kind of want to go through some of the generic stuff. We know most of this, but he was asked why did he choose Green Bay. He did mention former Raiders teammates and especially Rich Bisaccia. Like I said, I think Bisaccia is a pretty big asset. Now, outside of that Raiders team that he was on, how big of an asset, I don't know, but he certainly carries a reputation, and I think that's a good thing to have people that are that devoted to and want to play for Rich Bisaccia. He elaborated on the Rich Bisaccia thing. We've already kind of done this, but really talking about how supportive he was to him. Apparently, Hobbs in 2022 had a DUI arrest, which was reduced to a misdemeanor careless driving, but he mentioned that Rich Bisaccia's influence on him was life-changing. Talking about his role, he basically said he, very briefly talked with the Packers, who said, they like him and his versatility, that he can do both. And I think that that's kind of an honest answer because I don't think he knows. I don't think the Packers know. I think they like that he's versatile. I think they might have an idea, but they're not going to pigeonhole him even to his face to say, hey, we want you to come here and play nickel. I think they want to leave their options open in both directions. And so they basically just say, hey, we really like you. We like your versatility. We can't wait to get you in the building. And like I said, with offensive line and with corner and with a lot of other things, we got a lot of pieces. We got to see how they fit. The thing that everybody's kind of buzzing about, though, and we'll just skip to this because it wasn't a ton else in there, but he was asked about teammates of the Green Bay Packers that have reached out. And he mentioned, first of all, the Jordan Love thing was kind of a weird interaction. Apparently, he didn't realize Jordan Love had followed him. Schneidman brought that up to him. He had to go check, and he went through his phone and everything, found out that he was following him. So Jordan Love followed him on Instagram. But players like Xavier McKinney, Rashawn Gary, and Jaire Alexander reached out to congratulate him. Now, I'm a little torn on how much I care about that last little bit of information. On one hand, and this was my initial reaction, who cares? It's a corner who happens to be a Packer at the time saying, hey, congratulations, whatever. But I can't help but feel like it's a little bit deeper than that. The question obviously being, to some people, is Jaire actually going to stick around or could this actually happen, right? The question's kind of coming back full circle on Jaire Alexander. Not because of anything necessarily very strong, but just on the two little things that happened. One, Gutekunst saying we're not moving him right now, which I didn't really read anything into that at all, other than that's not a focus of ours. We're not actually actively, making calls and trying to work that out, which I don't even know how true that would even be. And then this. I think the more that you think about it, though, think about Jaire as, at the end of the season, how detached from the team he was. He couldn't get out of the building fast enough. He refused to speak to the media and flat out said, I don't have anything good to say, and I don't even know if I'm going to be here next year. if you take that attitude and extrapolate it out, it doesn't really make sense to me that a guy that seems very unhappy with the Packers, doesn't want to even associate himself with the Packers or anything, would, and it's possible that he has the guy's number, but it's also possible he's reaching out to people to get his phone number so that he can reach out and say, essentially, welcome to the Packers. It would just feel like a weird and kind of awkward thing for me to do if I was pretty sure I wasn't a Packer anymore. You know, if I'm reaching out to other people that probably know I'm not going to be on the team anymore, whether that be coaches or, obviously Gutekunst or fellow players like Keyshawn Nixon, who probably has his number, it would just seem a little bit weird to reach out to Keyshawn first of all, and then reach out to him and say, hey, welcome here, even though they're probably going to get rid of me pretty soon. That said, it could just be a very standard class act kind of thing to do. He felt like it was the right thing to do. I haven't been traded yet. I don't want to seem like a bitter guy. It's a fellow corner. He might even already know the guy and have his number and just say, hey, congrats, and that's the end of it. And honestly, I don't know how much there even is to read into it, because reading into it would assume that he knows that he's staying, if he was staying, right? Because if he doesn't know, then it doesn't really change anything. And I'm almost positive that he doesn't know that he's staying. So whatever it is he felt or knew earlier is probably more or less the same. Now, it's possible there's been some discussions and cooler heads prevail. Go let him cool off for a little bit, take some time, and then we'll kind of reconvene with his agent and say, here's what we need to do. Maybe we're looking at reducing that contract a little bit, which I think would make perfect sense. Again, I never wanted him to leave. I spent I don't know how much time railing against the idea of getting rid of him, but I just couldn't really deny it anymore at the end of the season when, it was basically a done deal from every single perspective. That said, again, things can change. Things change with Aaron Jones. They intended to bring him back, and then the talks stalled, and then right when they were possibly about to get something done, then all of a sudden Josh Jacobs becomes available, and it's like, okay, never mind, actually, we're not going to get something done. We're going to let you go. It's possible that, I didn't save the report, but according to someone, there's at least one person on the inside that's advocating for keeping Jaire. I don't know who that would be or how strong that voice is or how much that matters, but it's not unanimous that Jaire needs to go. Could be Matt LaFleur, it could be Jeff Hafley, it could be Derek Ansley, could be John Eric Sullivan. I have no idea who it is. Could be Rich Bisaccia. But, you got this guy yapping in your ear. You're trying to get a deal done. You're not really getting much. Free agency didn't really go your way. You're, kind of in a decent position to where you could have Jaire, Keyshawn, and Hobbs as your starting corners. You're feeling pretty good about that. And if Jaire does go down, you just pop Valentine in there and you're ready to rock and roll. And so you sit down, you have a little conversation with the agent, like, look, what do we got to do here? How do we just finish out this contract? And again, I think, Jaire understands the situation. He knows he's probably not getting premier money at this point, which is probably what he's upset about to begin with. Maybe there was even frustration because they started talking about a reduction in his contract. I don't know. I just know that you can have a plan and plans can change. And as long as he's not traded, which I still think the progression is they're going to try to trade him, and if they can't trade him, they're going to cut him. I think that is the plan right now. But I do think plans change, and I think it's a good sign that Jaire felt that it was appropriate to act as though he's a part of the team and reach out to Hobbs and say congratulations. I think it's, good that Gutekunst says, at this point we're not really working on a trade, which might mean that what they're currently working on is discussions with Jaire, possibly for a reworked contract, or maybe let's just keep it like it is and push through. I don't know. But we'll just take it day by day, and as things change, we'll recalibrate. But again, I don't see a net benefit in getting rid of Jaire. We're not going to get much compensation. We already have surplus money. If he plays 2 games, that's 2 games better than if we didn't have him. And maybe that is part of it. They were hoping to make some big splash, and maybe they would have benefited from freeing up the contract space. But at this point, if they can't get Trey Hendrickson, they don't even know what to spend all the money on. So what is the benefit of getting rid of Jaire, especially if nobody's willing to offer you anything? Cut him for what? At that point, it really is just a locker room cancer type of issue. So let it play out. We'll see how she goes. But I think the odds go up that Jaire stays if nothing gets done, which really nothing has gotten done. A couple moves here and there, but they still have $1 billion to spend. But all right, why don't we go ahead and take our final break? We'll be right back. By the way, there is a little bit extra on this via Rob Domofsky here. Let's see, first of all, he says, today could be the day for Jaire Alexander news. The Packers haven't released him yet because, quote, they're still holding out hope they can get something in return in trade. If they want to designate him a post-June 1 cut for cap purposes, they have to wait until 3 p.m. today. So that would have been, is that today? That was yesterday, 2 days ago for you at 3 o'clock. So, following that was, as of the start of the league year moments ago, there's been no movement with Jaire. They have not asked him to restructure his deal, not that he would have anyways, so the wait continues. So, the question of so far, have there been discussions of restructuring the contract? The answer is no. Will that happen? I don't know. And as far as why would he do that? I mean, if he gets cut, the contract goes away. So a lot of times for a restructured contract, essentially what you're saying is you're not going to earn this money. You're not going to earn it here. You're not going to earn it anywhere else. So here's what we think is fair, or we can cut you and you can try to get more somewhere else. But this is what we think is a fair offer. And a lot of times it ends up working out anyways, because a lot of the cash was already paid out up front in this contract, and so the amount of money on the back end isn't quite as high. That might not be the case with Jaire, because a lot of times the base salary does actually go up at the end. But it can work out in your favor, especially if there's a new signing bonus or something to that effect. But anyway, I just thought I'd mention it. Again, one of the many issues is kind of just getting stuck in one train of thought. And again, that is still my train of thought, that Jaire will not be here in 2025. But I don't want to get so stuck in it that we don't discuss the possibility of it not happening. And since there's been a couple little things to grab onto, I figured we grab onto it and at least have that conversation. So let's take our final break. We'll come back and do a little bit of NFL draft talk. We'll be right back. So kind of like the first segment, I just want to run through a little bit of the news and notes that have come through over the last week. Haven't done a lot of NFL draft stuff with a lot of free agency things that have been going on. So, nothing with the NFL draft is concrete, but a little bit of news and notes here and there just to kind of get us up on things. I know a lot of it is not necessarily Green Bay Packers, but what happens for the Packers is going to be a result of what happens for all the other teams. So it's worthwhile, in my opinion, to know what's going on in general. So, with that said, when we focus back on that number one pick with the Tennessee Titans, apparently right now they are, the quote is, open-minded about trading their pick, and it's the Giants and the Jets that are working real hard to get up there. I guess the more likely, which we've already talked about 1,000 times, the more likely is that the Giants end up being that trade, and it makes sense for both teams. The Giants are desperate, and the Titans get to move back just 2 spots, still get a big haul, and end up getting probably the guy you wanted anyways, if not the number 2 guy, right? You get Abdul Carter. There's an outside chance you get a quarterback that you want at 3, which, you didn't really expect to fall to you, although if you wanted him, you probably just take him at 1, so it wouldn't be that. Or I would assume Travis Hunter, but I don't really know. The outside shot here, though, is obviously if you were to trade to the Jets, let's just say you're the Titans and you want to blow everything up, which you probably should. Imagine the package you get from the Jets. It's going to be massive. So I wouldn't entirely rule that out, but I do think it makes a bunch of sense to just move back the 2 spots, see if you can get a premier, the next great pass rusher, which every team covets. I mean, look at Myles Garrett and how much everybody was fiending over that guy. If you have the opportunity to draft somebody, obviously there's no guarantee or even likelihood that it's that, but you can't pass on an opportunity like that, especially when you're already getting a haul and everything else. But I guess the bigger news point there is that the Jets are the other ones trying to make a case for it. With that said, Shadur Sanders, apparently that stock continues to fall. Obviously it was, what's his name, put his 2 cents in. He said he believed that it was race that was causing it. Is obviously absurd. It has nothing to do with his race. Cam Ward is the same race and is the number one prospect. He's not falling. A lot of guys are rising up the boards who are that race. In fact, probably 95% of the people on the entire board are that race. So no, it's not a racial thing with Jaire Sanders. It's obviously a silly notion. He's falling. If he's even falling, he's falling for other reasons, and they're legitimate. You can disagree with the concerns, but to just outright play the race card is... No, whatever. Again, I don't have a lot of respect for the people in the media anyways for their ability to think critically, but this is just another example of just the complete inability to have any thought whatsoever. And by the way, the fall as of right now is that he's rumored to land with the Raiders at 6, which is interesting in and of itself with the Raiders, because if we shift to the Bears, been saying that the whole plan seems to be build up the interior to help the run. Well, in order to run, you got to have a running back, so it makes sense that Ashton Jeanty would be that guy. The problem is there was a lot of talk about Ashton Jeanty going 6 to the Raiders. That just kept popping up all over the place. Bears fans were having a fit because the stars were just seeming to align. Well, the Raiders just signed a running back. Now, it's not a premier running back by any stretch of the imagination, but you do have to wonder if you sign a running back so that you don't have to panic and draft a running back, especially when you don't really want to draft a running back at 6 when you have the opportunity to draft somebody of an extremely high caliber at 6, like a quarterback or something else. It would make sense they'd go in a different direction, meaning it does move the needle in my mind a little bit that they would end up doing something like this, especially with more rumors surrounding Jaire Sanders going at 6. And, with the Tom Brady effect, I can't get it out of my head, and maybe I'm overthinking it, but Tom Brady saying that they wanted Matthew Stafford to kind of raise the profile of the team. They're kind of a nothing team that nobody cares about. And I think he wants them to be a destination. He wants it to be a big deal. He wants to pack the stadium. It's Vegas. It's big. There's a lot of people. It needs to be a destination place. We can't just be this team like the Chargers or the Jaguars that just nobody wants to come and watch. And so as much as I would try to think of Tom Brady as being better than that, he kind of gives me Jerry Jones vibes a little bit. I know he's a football guy, but there does seem to be that feeling of maybe the negatives for Jaire Sanders, which are, he's big mouth, high profile, arrogant, cocky, whatever. Maybe that plays to your favor a little bit. Maybe you want that buzz in Vegas. Maybe you want the attention that his dad is going to bring and all the, you want all the cameras in Vegas on you. It's not a terrible sales pitch, especially if you're going to probably suck anyways. And what are you going to do? You're going to draft the running back and that's going to fix your team? Screw that. Just take Jaire Sanders, take the media hype, sell some jerseys, have some fun. You know what I mean? You only live once. You only own a football team once. You know what I mean? Conversely, and I'm sure this is not helping the racial argument, Jackson Dart is rapidly rising up the rankings. I'd mentioned this when we did our, I don't know, what did we do? I think we were just going through mock drafts or whatever, but I'm starting to see him a lot pop up in the first round, and it's starting to make sense because there are a lot of teams like the Jets and teams like that are going to need quarterbacks kind of in the mid to even late rounds. And there's no quarterbacks in this draft class, so it wouldn't be surprising at all. In fact, it's kind of the point now it would be surprising if Jackson Dart didn't go in the first round. But it's becoming much more common to see him rising the rankings. And yeah, here's the note here. ESPN's Louis Riddick claims Sanders is being targeted by a smear campaign. So it's not only his race that's the problem, but it's a deliberate targeted attack to smear him because of his race, which is really weird. I don't know how you even. I don't know. I can't. I love a good conspiracy theory. Some of them are a little bit out there. You know what I mean? I can get behind flat Earth and aliens and all that. This one, a little too far-fetched. Matthew Golden is another guy that's rapidly rising. He had a fantastic workout, or at least 40 time, which everyone's going to freak out about. But it was good enough to at least put him in the potential first wide receiver taken conversation. That isn't a very, massively common thing. But as I've pointed out, you've seen Teteroa McMillan kind of all over the place, usually top 10-ish. but kind of all over. Luther Burden, same thing. But there are some that believe that Matthew Golden could actually be the first wide receiver taken. Now, that's kind of good, kind of bad, because I think Matthew Golden does make some sense for the Packers. If he doesn't, that pushes everybody down, but also potentially pushes some other guys that could make sense down the board a little bit, like Teteroa McMillan. Again, I don't think he falls really anywhere near the Packers, but it gets to a point where there's a lot of guys that you say that for, and there's also a lot of guys that you think will be there, could be there, that could end up going a lot earlier, like Jackson Dart, like Matthew Golden, like some of the pass rushers on the other side of things, like the corners that have kind of fallen into the set. If they start going before the Packers, somebody has to fall. In fact, a couple people, several people, multiple people might have to fall to the Packers. It's a question of who those people will be. And Teteroa is in the unlikely category, not the definitely not category. A couple of other team notes. The Chiefs are reportedly looking at offensive tackles. Will Campbell, Kelvin Banks. Kevlin Banks? Is that his name? Have I been saying his name wrong the entire time? Kevlin Banks? My brain just auto-read that one, dude. Josh Simmons, etc., etc. Patriots could potentially be shifting focus to offensive linemen. Bears predictably are predicted to draft Ashton Jeanty. Remember, they were all in on offensive line for a very long time. Then they went out in free agency and got 3 offensive linemen, and now you're not going to see very many mock drafts that don't have Ashton Jeanty going to the Bears. Kind of half talked about this already, but Browns and Giants looking at quarterback prospects, with Browns possibly making a bold draft move. I don't even know what that could possibly mean, considering they have the second pick. Trade up to 1, I guess. But as for the Green Bay Packers, they were officially awarded a 7th-round pick. So they have their normal draft 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then they have 2 7th-round picks, one which comes from Pittsburgh, so they gave one up, I believe, for the quarterback, and then we got one from Pittsburgh for Preston Smith, and we've got our 7th-round compensatory pick. So that does shuffle things around a little bit. I only know that because I remember we had pick 200, and now we don't, but it's going to be a little bit more scarce than what we've had the last several years, so it can't be as scattershot. You're going to have to, just hit, man. But that's all I really got for today. I do have some other things I want to do regarding the draft. We just don't have a lot of time to really explore it, but I want to kind of get back into going over some of the prospects and whatnot. Again, we'll do that with a little bit renewed focus based on what we got going on here, which is not much. And we'll start really diving into that. But you guys have a good rest of your day. I'll talk to you later. Have a good one. Bye-bye.